Hello, my name is Scott. I play and coach Ultimate Frisbee, and I'm here to tell you all about where to bring the disc in when it goes out of bounds. So let's start with something pretty simple. We have someone throwing the disc. They're going to throw it right there, and they're going to throw a big, old, wide arcing disc. And let's say the disc comes back into bounds right there, and it lands right here and rolls out the back just like that, and maybe stops right there. You would want to bring this disc in where it crossed the end zone, the back end zone line, because it was in the field of play right here. So you want to bring it in at the point in the central zone. This is the central zone. The point in the central zone that is closest to where it last crossed the perimeter of the field. And so that would be bringing it in right here, because that's the closest point to right here. Let's say that the disc is thrown, same throw, just like so. But this time we have offense and defense in play, and the defense is going to come out, and they are going to jump and go and D the disc right here. So they take the disc, or they just smack the disc, and it flies off into this direction over here. The thing that happens now is because the defense touched the disc, even though it was out of bounds, and it doesn't matter if the defense was inbounds or out of bounds when this happened. They could have jumped from inbounds, they could have jumped from out of bounds, it doesn't matter. Because the defense touched the disc here at this point, the disc will now come into play, as in the defense, who just D'd the disc, will now get the disc, at the point in the central zone that is closest to where they touched it. And in this case, it's right here at this corner. That's where the defense, now offense, would get the disc, because the defense touched it. In the same scenario, let's say the offense jumps from inbounds and tries to catch and throw the disc back inbounds. That's called a greatest for the Frisbee terminology. If they jump from inbounds and touch the disc, then the disc will also come into play, regardless of what eventually happens, unless they score or throw it inbounds. But let's say they try to touch this, they try to grab it, they don't, and they just drop it or something, but they touch the disc. After jumping from inbounds, the disc will also come into play here at this corner. If the offense initiates this play while they're out of bounds, like maybe they're running, they go out of bounds, then they jump and try to touch the disc, or they just keep on running and they touch the disc there, doesn't matter. Nothing changes. The disc, because it never came back in bounds, never had the opportunity to come back in bounds, and the defense didn't touch it, the disc will come into play at the last point that it was in bounds, which is right there. This can be a pretty consequential throw in some instances, especially if it doesn't have the opportunity to come back in bounds. So now the defense, now offense, will get caveat. If the disc flies like this and it just keeps flying, and then it lands right here, in this instance, the disc will not come in right here because it was inbounds, technically, over the end of the end zone. This is the last place that it crossed the perimeter line. That is where it will go into play, the point in the central zone close to this point. So it'll go right there again. One of the big things, so the reason I'm focusing on this throw a lot is because it's actually relatively common. And the other issue that I see a lot of instances is, let's say this happens where maybe the disc comes back in bounds and the defense smacks the disc and it goes out of bounds and lands here. The disc needs to be brought back in on the corner all the time. I see people bring the disc back in, and then they'll, bring it in over here a little bit, because it's a little bit easier if they do that. Don't do that. That's cheating. It's whatever respective side you're on. You should try to be playing by the rules. A few other caveats. If the disc is thrown like this, maybe it hits the ground here, and then it rolls. You get it where it stops rolling or where someone stopped the roll. If someone runs up and kicks the disc, and then it moves it a whole bunch, typically the disc will just go back to where it was kicked or where it was hit. Similar thing if it rolls out of bounds in this instance, so maybe it hits there and it rolls out of bounds. If you are the team that is now on offense in this scenario, so you were on defense, now you're on offense, you get it, you guessed it, at this corner, because that was the point in the central zone that is closest to where it last crossed the perimeter line. Let's say the disc goes like this, lands out of bounds and then rolls back inbounds, the disc comes in over here because once it hits the ground out of bounds, it's dead. It's a dead disc. Nothing that happens to it anymore matters really. All that matters is when it was a live disc in the air, flying. All right, so now let's talk about what happens during pulls. All of the rules that we just discussed, all the scenarios are the exact same, except if someone pulls the disc and it lands in the end zone and then rolls and stops in the end zone, or even if someone catches it in the end zone, you have to play it where it stopped. You don't get to walk it to the front of the end zone so long as it stayed in bounds. If it rolls out of bounds, then you get the opportunity, because it crossed the perimeter line, you get to take it to the front of the end zone line. Once again, in this instance, it's at that corner because that's the point that is closest to where it crossed the perimeter line. You don't get to, just take it a little bit in here. That's cheating, and we don't want to do that. Now let's say that our puller pulls too good, and they pull it out of the back of the end zone, and it lands right here. That's great, but the defense, or the receiving team in this instance, gets the opportunity to take it at the brick mark, which is right here. In this instance, according to the rules, the current rules, what you would do, whoever is going to be taking the disc will put a hand in the air, extend it above their head, just a straight arm above your head, and yell brick or middle. That's what the rules say. What typically happens, and what has happened for a very long time, is people will extend both arms above their head and clap. So just a straight arm clap above your head, and they will say brick. That means that the disc landed out of bounds. And lines in Frisbee are considered out of bounds. So if it lands on the perimeter line, that is out of bounds. Let's say someone pulls the disc and it lands out of bounds. Actually, we'll make it even slightly. It lands on the line. In Frisbee, line is out. So this would be considered out of bounds, even if it lands right on the line. In a similar way, if someone catches the disc on offense and they land with their feet on the goal line, they have not scored. You have to land with your feet in the end zone in order to score, not on the line. But back to pulling. So the disc lands out of bounds. It's not that it lands in bounds and then rolls out of bounds. It lands out of bounds. Then the defense, or the receiving team, gets the disc at the brick mark, which is right here. And the brick mark is 20 yards up from the goal line right here, which is the same distance as the back of the end zone is to the goal line. So that's one reference point to help you as far as where that brick mark is, center of the field. The other way to think about it is it's a little bit more than 1/3 of the way up the field, or I guess, and it is also closer to the center of the field than it is to the goal line. So those are all different ways you can think about where that brick mark should be. And the reason that I point this out is it's usually unmarked, and people usually don't take the full 20 yards to get to their brick mark point. They will only take 10, 15 yards or so and put the disc in. Take those extra yards, because you got them. Might as well, they're free yards. The other thing that can happen if the disc is pulled out of bounds, let's say the disc is pulled like that. In this instance, you have a choice. You can either take the disc at the brick mark, or you can take the disc on the side of the field where it went out of bounds. This has been a brief review of where to bring the disc in when it goes out of bounds. Thank you. Have fun playing Ultimate Frisbee, and that's it.